David Ringwood,
And occupation?
Vice President for Development for the Community Foundation of Dutchess County.
And can you tell me, just off the top of your head, what does the Hudson Valley mean to you?
The Hudson Valley means to me so many different things. We have so many roots in the area. The Hudson Valley, just for the natural resources that we have with the river, the mountains, it's a beautiful area to be in. We're so close to so many different things, anywhere between Albany and New York City and east and west. It's a beautiful area. As far as ties to the local area, we are a longtime family in Poughkeepsie. We go back several generations. As a matter of fact, my maternal grandmother, her last name was Ostrom, and she had cousins who had done some research, and allegedly we go back to one of the two founding families, the Ostroms of the Van Cleeks, that established Poughkeepsie. And so it's something we've wanted to do, is kind of go back and verify that.
When you think of the Hudson Valley, what immediately jumps to mind and why?
When I think of Hudson Valley, some of the things that jump to mind is just we're very fortunate to be in this area. Just the different things that we have that we're so close to. We've got the apple farms, the farms in general, the dairy farms, the history of the area going back between the river, the regattas, the fact that it's a college area, the fact that we have so many colleges and educational institutions in the area, and now with the Culinary Institute. It's just a very rich area as far as culture, history. Just almost anything you want is accessible from this area.
On a personal level, what would you say is your favorite thing about the Hudson Valley?
My favorite thing about the Hudson Valley, I would say, would probably be a combination of the river and the fall foliage and just the natural beauty of autumn in the area.
Yeah, I share that sentiment. My favorite things too. How long have you lived in the Hudson Valley?
I have lived in the Hudson Valley my whole life, except for when I went away to college for a few years. My whole life's been spent in Dutchess County.
I bet you missed it when you went away to college.
Yes, it was a good experience to get out of the area and see some other things. And Syracuse was a larger town than the city of Poughkeepsie, so it was a little bit more metropolitan. But nothing like coming back to your hometown.
So, can you describe childhood in the Hudson Valley? What was it like growing up around here?
My childhood in the Hudson Valley. Everything seemed to be accessible. There was nothing about walking from downtown Poughkeepsie, going down to the river when the shad fishermen came in and getting shad, or when the boats came up to the shore, walking up to the Bardavon on Sunday afternoons to see a movie, which was probably about a quarter at the time, but seeing a double feature on a Sunday afternoon, sitting up in the balcony with your candy and sodas. Walking around to the shops downtown before they put in the main mall. It was going shopping, holiday shopping. I mean, you know, our Macy's and Gimbel's basically was Wallace's and Lucky Platt's. M. Schwartz's was the fine men's clothing store, the Up-to-Date for women. Just so many things, the Tom McCann shoes, the Doff shoes, the book and record stores, the record store on the corner of Market, the restaurants that were in the area. Just everything was in just a few blocks in the city of Poughkeepsie. And going back to when my mother used to talk about even downtown, every several blocks was its own community. You could get to a store, you could buy things, you'd have entertainment, you'd play out in the streets, or every little few blocks was its own individual community.
Building upon that, how much, in your opinion, has changed for the Hudson Valley for the good, for the bad?
Much has changed in the Hudson Valley, good and bad. Good, I think, with the expansion of what we have as far as the resources, again, the colleges that are here, the businesses that are coming in, the economic development, that's good. What's bad, I would say, is sometimes how quickly the growth has happened. The area has become a suburb of New York City now. People are moving up from the suburbs of New York because we're the new suburb. There's been a lot of development going on in the eastern part of the county. We used to have lots of farms. I mean, the Dutchess County Fair, even years ago when I commuted to Westchester for work at one point, and they used to make fun of me because of the dairy farms, and we were very rural. They called it the sticks up here in Dutchess County. And so as a joke one day, I came down with the classifieds from the Poughkeepsie Journal and showed them that they were selling sheep in the classifieds of the Poughkeepsie Journal.
Great. Could you elaborate a little bit more on your family roots in the Hudson Valley?
Our family roots in the Hudson Valley. My maternal grandmother, she was an Ostrom, so that goes back to the founding of the city of Poughkeepsie. My mother's father, Edward Murphy, had come from Boston. He worked on the Mid-Hudson Bridge, and actually when he came here is when he met my grandmother. They would go into the shop downtown to get lunch and meals, the workers on the bridge. That's where he met my grandmother, and so he ended up staying in this area. According to my mother, too, it's either on the Ringwood or the Murphy side that, on the Murphy side, probably a great-grandfather worked on the Poughkeepsie Railroad Bridge as one of the iron workers, and that would be interesting to find out what kind of records they have to actually see and research and get some names and information there. We have longtime firemen in the family. My father's father was a fireman in the city of Poughkeepsie and actually drove the last horse-drawn fire engine in the city of Poughkeepsie when they retired the horses. So we have many stories from my father about the horses, Prince and Jack, and my uncles. We've got photographs of them with my grandfather on the rig down at Cataract in front of Mount Carmel Square, and a photograph of the rig when they retired the horses. I guess they had a big ceremony at Mansion Square Park and also at Eastman Park. As far as other local history and family ties, I guess because I used to think that our family was all firemen and nurses because we had so many that were in those professions, and so kind of that service and community tie-in to the family was very, very tight with our family.
Can you talk about growing up so close to the railroads?
Probably from the time I was born till I was about 5 or 6 years old, our family lived on Bain Avenue in the city of Poughkeepsie. And in the back of the yard, the hill sloped up to a level that we could play on, and several yards back from that was a mesh fence. Behind that was the train trestle. And so the trains were going by constantly. So when we were out playing in the yard, if we heard a train coming, we'd shout that a train was coming. We would all get on the swings, because the swing set, you could swing and face the train tracks. And we would swing as the train went by. And I just remember the loud clack of the wheels on the track as it went by. It was very, very rhythmic as the trains went by. I don't remember too much of them tooting the horn for us, but I do remember the horns, the whistles blowing on the trains at different times. But just those kind of ideas of sitting, and the train was just so close, and it just was common daily event that you really didn't think it was anything spectacular. I guess now, in retrospect, it was really impressive to have a train that close to the house and be able to see that when you're a kid. So I don't think I ever really had train sets at home because we always saw one in the backyard. Also, at one point, my grandparents lived down on Parker Avenue, and the apartment that they were in was very close to the train tracks, too. And I remember probably I was about 6 or 7 years old at that time, but when we were in the house and the train would go by, the whole place would shake. The building would just shake with the trains going by. So it was kind of fun. I mean, we all kind of look forward to having trains go by just for that experience.
Let's see. Do you remember the fire? Were you in the area of the fire when the time of the fire on the tracks?
I am trying to remember that because I know because of the relationship of the family to firemen, we would used to listen to the whistles whenever a whistle blew. And what we tended to do is we would look up the address because they used to have a fire whistle, and it would give a 3-number code. And everyone had a chart in their house that would tell you what intersection or what firebox was at. And it was somewhere nearby or somewhere where we knew someone lived, or it might be a big building or something. We'd all hop in a car and go over to see the fire because invariably we'd have a relative who might be working on it. So my mother's brother, Mickey Murphy might be there. My father's brothers, Tom Ringwood, who's the fire chief, his brother William Ringwood, Uncle Bill, Bill's son, Bill Ringwood. They were all firemen. So invariably we might see someone working on the fire. And then through the family relationships, a lot of friends were firemen. So invariably, my grandmother would pretty much know anybody who was there.
Did you hear any stories about the fire on the bridge? Related through family history?
I remembered, and I'm not sure if it was hearing it from relatives about it. Apparently, it was very hot up on the bridge. It was very hot and very hard to get to. And because the oils had seeped into the rails, I guess it was very intense, and the heat was so high that the rails buckled. I mean, I guess they were just melting, and I guess it was red hot. I think maybe my Uncle Mickey had said something, because Mickey was on the bridge, as was my Uncle Tommy, the fire chief. But I think him just saying how very hot it was, and very intense and very tough to fight.
So, have you ever gone up on the bridge?
Both bridges? I've actually been on both bridges. Back in high school, I walked across the Mid-Hudson Bridge, which is a really nice experience, because having the family relationship to my grandfather, having worked on it. One thing I do remember is getting halfway out to one of the stanchions and looking down over the railing at the river. And as you stand at the support of the river, the illusion, because the river is running by, is that the support of the bridge is actually moving in the water, which is kind of a very strange sensation. But then also I had the opportunity, I know Fred Schaefer, and one day he was bringing some people up onto the railroad bridge, because he was trying to, encourage people, as they had for years, to support the bridge and the walkway. So we had the opportunity to go up one day. Unfortunately, it was kind of overcast, so I didn't get the full effect of it. But in speaking to others who had gone up several times before on a clear day, the view is just absolutely spectacular. So I'm sorry I didn't get up this last time before they closed the bridge to start the work. But just seeing the views that are possible. For the fact that you can stand on the railroad bridge and look down at the Mid-Hudson Bridge is just an amazing, amazing sensation.
So would you say the bridge, the Poughkeepsie Railroad Bridge, has meant to the Hudson Valley area, the Poughkeepsie region?
I think the railroad bridge has just always been kind of an icon. It's something that's always been there, and it was always very functional. It was there as a piece of equipment, as the train tracks going by, that it was something that was there functional just to keep things going and industry moving. Now, and after so many years of it having just standing there and nothing being done about it, and people wanted to tear it down, and the different options they've been looking at, the walkway appears to be the best option they can do for it. In looking at the reporting they've done and the estimates of what it would cost to tear it down versus converting it over to a walkway, the walkway is just a great option. And having been up there and seen the views, I think a lot of people would take advantage of it. I think it could be a big draw. And with all the other things it's got going for it, it would be the longest walkway, pedestrian bridge in the country, if not the world. The views that it accesses. In talking to some volunteers too, they had gone up to make sure nothing happened to the bridge on around 4th of July. And the fact that you could be up there at dusk and see fireworks all over the Hudson Valley at one time, especially with what they've got planned for the quadricentennial. I mean, it's going to be a great opportunity with the ships going up and down the river, fireworks and celebrations up and down. It's just going to be a great launch for what appears to be a very good idea.
Will you go up there and after it's completed?
I'm looking forward to going up there when it's completed. The office I'm at right now for the Community Foundation is very close to where they're going to have an access on Washington Street to be able to get stairs to go up. And I'm looking forward to the day when I can take a lunch break and walk across the bridge over to Ulster County and walk back again.
That's going to be great. That's going to be great. Let's see. I have a couple more questions. Any anecdotal stories that you might be able to share that concern the bridge?
At the bridge.
If you don't have any else.
I remember growing up, my father had a copy. When the bridge first opened, there was a magazine that was made. It looked like a large style, almost like a Life look size magazine that was done. But of course, it was the late 1800s, so it wasn't a lot of photographs, not color photographs. It was basically black and white, but it was about the railroad bridge. And I think they talked about how it being the longest bridge in the world. But in that paper, there were photographs of some of the buildings that were existing around the Hudson Valley and the city of Poughkeepsie at that time. And in cleaning out my parents' home, we're trying to locate that because we don't think that they would have given it away, but we're trying to find it because it was an intact magazine. It was the full magazine. I've seen reprints of the cover. But going through that and seeing the old buildings in the city of Poughkeepsie the way they looked, prior to 1900, there's a lot of history around here, and it's nice to see that things are being preserved.
And that's a final question. Anything that you would like to share about any of the topics we've hit before? Anything that you feel that maybe I didn't ask and you'd like to add into it?
I think that doing these oral histories is a great idea. There's so many people in the area who've been here for their whole lives. There's so many stories of things that happened in growing up, the different experiences even people my age would have and older. And just to be able to put this together in one place, I know that there's a lot of people who might appreciate the history of the area. They see it as it is now, but to appreciate how far we've come. The city's been around a long time and has gone through many ups and downs and different upheavals and different challenges over the past decades. But it's good to see where it is now, because basically if you learn about where you are because of the history of how you got here. And it's nice to add that to see where we're going.
Great, thanks.
She met my grandmother here, and so they settled in the city of Poughkeepsie. My mother was born in January of 1930, and the bridge opened in August. And my mother and grandmother would always tell the story about how my mother was only several months old when they had the grand opening of the Mid-Hudson Bridge. And as a toddler, she took her first step. She was just learning how to walk. And my grandparents walked her across the Mid-Hudson Bridge on opening day. So that's something that my mother was always very proud about, something she always liked to share with people. And again, it's kind of just a tie into our family, to the area.
This gives you a kind of a warm feeling every time you pass that bridge.
Oh, it is. I know that my mother was extremely proud of the Hudson Valley, and she instilled that in us, and the fact that this is our hometown, and the long history we've had here, and the importance of the Mid-Hudson Bridge in our family, because the bridge actually brought our family together, made it happen. With the firemen in the area, so that's how my father was. Everyone grew up downtown, everyone knew each other, so yeah, it's very important.
Do you ever imagine leaving the Hudson Valley?
You know, I've thought that there's a possibility of moving out of the area, but I realize that my roots are so deep that it would be very difficult to leave this area. I would miss it too much.
Yeah, great. Yeah, I'm the same way. Every time I go far, I come right back. It doesn't take long. Paul, anything? Any questions you might have?
Did any of your family members who are firefighters happen to know the cause of the fire on the bridge itself?
I don't know if
determine a cause.
I don't know if they've ever determined a cause. I've read a lot about what they've talked about, and
since the train, I think it was Penn Central at the time. Wasn't doing that well, and there was the possibility perhaps that an arsonist might have done it. That was just like one of.
Well, there were a couple things, because the sparks from the trains would have set off, because they used to have people who rode on the trains that would put out the fires. But I think at that point they'd shut the water off, and if they had made the decision to shut off the water, then there would be no water available to put out a fire. So I don't know if it's coincidence or if it was planned, but it just seems kind of odd that there was no way to put out a fire if there had one. And I'm not sure if what I had read was that they had eliminated that position on the train also, but I think it was that there was no water to be able to even put out a fire. But it's kind of unusual.
Yes, may have been some shenanigans on that.
Possibly.
All right, I guess we're all set.
Excellent, good.
Just one
Oh, sure.
Oh, go ahead.
Do you see the bridge as an important step towards the revitalization of Poughkeepsie?
I think the walkway over the Hudson could be very important to the revitalization of Poughkeepsie. As I said, our family history, just going back to our parents, downtown city of Poughkeepsie was very important. It was a mecca. It was everything. It was everything you needed in just a few blocks. And then over through the 60s and 70s, there was a lot of upheaval. There was a whole urban renewal. It was take down the old to make way for the new was the philosophy, and they put the arterial through. The fact that they put the arterial right in front of the Poughkeepsie Railroad Station, which was designed by the same architects who did Grand Central Station, you can no longer appreciate really the front of the building from any kind of view. But that was the idea back then, tear everything down. We almost lost the Bardavon back in the 70s because they wanted to tear it down. It was just an old building that no one wanted to use. So having the walkway and tying something new into something old could be very important for the revitalization, because it might make people look back and see really what a grand city this was, and this area, how important it was with the regattas. I mean, and that goes back to the late 1800s. Communities would come out for these races on the river. Even the president, Roosevelt, used to go out on the river. So It's looking back, but I think, yes, the idea of the walkway, tying everything back in again, could be very important. Let's dip into the past and pull it back up again. Make it new rather than tear it down.
Great.
Do you think the revitalization of this bridge will put Poughkeepsie perhaps on the world map again? Being that at the time it was built, it was the world's longest railroad bridge.
I think it will probably, because of the people who are supporting this and the amount of support and let me go back again. I think that the walkway over the railroad bridge, with the supporters they have now and the people that are involved, it's going to be covered very well. It's going to get a lot of publicity. It's going to be made a focal point of many different things, and I think that will give it some, at least national attention. Worldwide would be terrific. I think with our accessibility to New York City, we're probably going to be a tourist spot for these things. You know, with the Roosevelt Library, the Vanderbilt Estates, we've got so many different things that would draw tourists in. That might be just another thing. But it's also functional because you can bike over it, walk over it, race over it, run over it. It's going to have many different functions. So hopefully that will draw more people in and again, be a multi-purpose. And I'm drawing a blank on a word. Park. It'll be a multi-purpose unit once, excuse me. It will have many functions rather than just one as a railroad bridge.
Thank you.